Hi, I'm Benjamin Payne. At the K-12 Education Office at Hillsdale College, we support school founding groups and their efforts to start classical schools across the country. Finding the right leader is one of the first and most important steps to building a successful school. While we do consider experience in education, we seek candidates who exhibit unwavering personal integrity, honesty, courage, and servant-hearted leadership. Perhaps that's you. If you're looking to engage in fulfilling, impactful, and challenging work protecting our nation's future and building up the next generation of virtuous citizens, we'd love to hear from you. I'm looking for strong school leaders right now. Learn more about how you can make a difference at hillsdale.edu/leader. hillsdale.edu/LEADER. That's hillsdale.edu/leader.
Welcome to the Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast, bringing you insight into classical education and its unique emphasis on human virtue and moral character, responsible citizenship, content-rich curricula, and teacher-led classrooms. Now your host, Scot Bertram.
Thanks for listening. The Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast is part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you find your audio. You also can find more information on topics and ideas discussed on this show at our website, k12.hillsdale.edu. We're joined by Kristina Vourax. She is Public Relations Manager for Hillsdale College's K-12 Education Office, also a founding board president for a Hillsdale College member school, Lake Country Classical Academy in southeastern Wisconsin. Kristina, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about your school journey for your children and sort of how you became involved in this educational system.
Sure. Well, to try and make a long story short, first of all, creating a school from the ground up was not on my bucket list of things to do in life. It just kind of happened. I am a mom and have two children. And at the time, we had moved back to Wisconsin in about 2013. And I was very committed to public school. I grew up in the public school system. I wanted to support our local public school and enrolled our children in a nearby elementary school that we were very happy with. And it wasn't until my son entered middle school in 2016 when my eyes were wide open to what is going on. I mean, I was just couldn't believe that, he came back first day of school with a Chromebook and was showing me all this platform that he was working on. And I'm like, is this just like a temporary one-time class that you're taking to learn how to use a computer? And then I realized, no, these are children that are teaching themselves on a laptop, and teachers are no longer really teaching. They're more facilitators in a classroom. And so I started asking questions about this and inquiring and realizing this is the way it's going to be all the way through high school. And I was really upset about that. And so some other parents that felt the same way, we kind of found each other. And initially, it wasn't my intent to try and start a school. It was to try and work with the district to create a more traditional option, bring back what they had, where teachers are teaching the center of the classroom, providing lessons and content. And, what's wrong with having a book? Why does everything have to be on the computer? And so that was really the catalyst of it. And when the district was very clear that this is the direction they're going, we tried for a good almost 2 years to try and turn this around and provide another option. But when that was clear that nothing was going to change, I said to this group of parents, I was like, well, rather than fighting, the establishment and all this negativity, let's take all this energy we have and focus it in a positive way and create what we want for our kids. And I said, what about starting a new school, a charter school? And they looked at me like I had two heads, and they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how this works, but people do it. And a lot of times charter schools I know are founded by parents. So I said, let's look into it. So I had no idea what we wanted in terms of what is the curriculum, but I knew that we wanted it to be teacher-led, that we wanted a more traditional teaching methods with, supplemented by textbooks and pencils and paper and more of what's old is new again approach. And we started researching and visiting charter schools in the area to try and get an idea of what is the curriculum that we want for this school.
How did you get connected with Hillsdale College when you were founding Lake Country Classical Academy, and what drew you to the Hillsdale K-12 program?
We did not know what we wanted in the way of curriculum. I'm not an educator, so I really didn't know, what that was going to look like. So when we started visiting these other charter schools, one school, someone said, "Oh, there's this classical school up in Appleton, Wisconsin, and you should go, check that out." So we did. We went up there and spent the day and was impressed with what we saw. And I thought, "Oh, wow, it's classical. What is this classical all about?" So I was talking to a friend of mine actually about it, and she's like, "Oh, you should check out Hillsdale. They have a charter school program for classical education." And I was like, and I knew of Hillsdale, but I didn't know that they had this program. So I immediately got on their website and started checking out the Barney Charter School Initiative and watched the video, and I was sold immediately. I mean, it was just, I can't even describe. It was like, this is exactly what we need. This is better than I could ever imagine it being. And so just, the return to excellence and all the traditional teaching methods and teachers being the heart of the classroom, and everything about it was appealing. And so I was like, we've got to do everything in our power to, be a Hillsdale College member school.
You've alluded to this a couple of times, and so I want to have some clarity, because you've said the phrase teacher-led, teacher is the center of the classroom. There are people listening, perhaps, who are saying, yeah, well, what's the alternative? Of course, teachers lead a classroom. So what were you seeing, or what are other models out there that are not necessarily teacher-led classrooms?
So in a traditional public school setting, teachers, they aren't as, and I'm not saying all, but a lot of times they're not leading the instruction. So the instruction is really happening where children are on a laptop and learning at their own pace. They're choosing what to learn, how to learn it. It's a different approach to education, whereas what I loved about the classical approach is the teacher is really the master of the content. They are almost a living textbook, as you may, because they know the knowledge. They are masters of their craft, and they're able to share that knowledge with their students and get them inspired and get them to love learning and want to learn more. So, I mean, my heart breaks for children who have never had an experience of having a good teacher and what they can do to inspire you and really change your life. I mean, we can all think back to our teachers in our lives that we've had and what those that have inspired us to do better. And if all you're learning is from a laptop and the teacher's there in the corner to answer questions when you have one, I mean, that's just a really, really sad state of education.
Is Lake Country Classical Academy a charter school? And then are all charter schools public schools?
Yes. So Lake Country Classical Academy is a charter school. All charter schools in the country are public schools. We all get our funding from the state and per pupil funding, so that they're not private, they're tuition free, anyone can apply, and pretty much, although maybe in the first year when these schools open, there may be seats available, but pretty quickly it fills up and we have to run a lottery every year.
So I'm certain it's different, at least slightly different in state by state. But how did, for example, your school get authorized and gain approval to become a public charter school? And is that process, again, somewhat similar across the country?
Yeah, every state, so far as I know, is different. There may be some similarities, but in Wisconsin in particular, there are a couple different paths you can take to get authorized as a charter school and receive state funding. So the two options in Wisconsin are either to be authorized under a school district, or you can go to an independent authorizer, which there are a handful of those throughout the state. Most of them are under a university system that you go to and you apply and want to be under their umbrella. We did everything. We actually applied with, and that's one piece of advice I would give to people is don't put all your eggs in one basket when you're seeking authorization, because you have to be pursuing multiple paths at one time, because you just don't know which path is going to work out for you, and time, the clock's ticking, so you gotta kind of pursue everything at once. We were told no by not only the school districts in our area, but also the main two independent authorizers said to us that we don't feel that you need to have a charter in your school, in your area, for two reasons. Number one, you're not going to serve enough at-risk children. And number two, you already have access to quality education. So that was kind of the message we were getting. In the end, we ended up getting authorized by a Native American college. And that relationship, we are extremely grateful for their foundational support. And that really got us up and going for the first 3 years. And now we have since transferred to our local county executive, who's now our authorizer.
Talking with Kristina Vourax. She is Public Relations Manager for the Hillsdale College K-12 Education Office, also founding board president for Hillsdale College Member School, Lake Country Classical Academy in southeastern Wisconsin. How did Hillsdale College support you and support your school founding and support the school starting?
Yeah, Hillsdale College K-12 office has been an immense support for us. We could not I don't know how we would have done it without Hillsdale, quite honestly. There's so much that goes into building a school out of nothing, and we didn't have a charter management organization or anyone to help us out with this to say, here's what you do, here are your next steps. So Hillsdale was able to provide us with the framework and the timeline to say, here are the things you need to be thinking about. They're very clear. They don't manage our school at all. Our board is the one that dictates, makes all those decisions for the school and still does. But they do. Hillsdale provided us with that guidance on what we need to be thinking about, what needs to be accomplished when, and the three biggies, which every school is going to have kind of a challenge with, but they're the hard things to do, but you can get past it. Mm-hmm. Number one is authorization, which I talked about. But number two, which Hillsdale supports us on, is finding your school leader. And they help us in, we did all the initial outreach and search for that school leader, but then we brought our final candidates to Hillsdale for them to interview, because the Hillsdale K-12 office knows what it takes to be a good, strong school leader and that recipe for success and what's going to make it a good school. So that school leader was important, but also the facility search, which is also something that our board had to do on our own. But the other piece that Hillsdale K-12 office brings is the teacher training, which is just incredible. I mean, the curriculum that they bring us, number one, is so content rich and so amazing and well thought out, and I don't think it gets any better than that. So, but in order to use this curriculum correctly, the teachers need the training and how to use it and how to support it with various resources. So that's what the Hillsdale K-12 office does. In addition, they provide support for our school leader and giving that person guidance in any school in terms of getting it up and going to every day, anytime you need help, they're there. Board training, which is also extremely important to make sure that a board understands its role as governance and how to oversee and ensure that the school's performing the way it needs to, how to interact with your leader, what's appropriate, how to support your leader, and just being a reference, again, anytime you need it, you can call and get questions answered. It's a wonderful support.
Remind us when Lake Country Classical Academy opened, and then since that opening, how has your role changed and how has the board's role changed? There's an immense amount of work, as you've outlined, to get things off the ground and get everything stood up and ready to go. What happens after the doors open? Right.
So we opened in the fall of 21, and the board's role has shifted dramatically from being that working board in the trenches prior to opening when you don't have any staff yet. Your board is doing all the work to get this ship in the water, and you hire a school leader that you trust, but there's no staff yet to support your school leader. So you are his or her staff in the beginning and helping figure out all the pieces and everything that needs to get done before your doors open. And then the school leader is also responsible for hiring all of your teachers, all of your staff, everyone. So there's so much work that happens, especially in that year before you open. And your board is so used to being in the trenches with that sometimes it's really difficult to kind of then let go and let the school leader run the show. But that's what needs to happen as soon as possible when you open your doors. And if they need help, they reach out. But for the most part, the board needs to then make that transition to governance where you're overseeing and not getting involved in the day-to-day operations of the school.
I want to go back just briefly to the challenge of finding a facility, finding a building. This is something that I've talked with multiple board presidents and multiple people who have started these charter schools. What makes it so difficult to find the right location? I know in some states, local school districts can say, no, we don't want to sell to a potential charter. We don't want the competition. In other states, there are laws that say, no, you can't do that if you're a local school district. What makes it so hard to find the right place to start a school like this?
Everything you outlined is exactly right. I mean, it's not only the actual inventory. When you're looking at a certain radius of where you want to be, you're limited on what's there, what's available, and also you're at their mercy. Will you please lease this facility to me? I mean, at least in Wisconsin, school districts can do whatever they want. Mm-hmm. In fact, we're in a position right now where we're in 2 campuses. We're looking for one place, and there is a school, an empty school that would be perfect, but the school district won't sell it to us. So, and they put it's for sale, but they put it in the clause that they will not sell it to a K-12 institution. And if you buy it, you cannot lease or sell it to a K-12 institution. So it's very intentional that way. So it's difficult. It's really difficult. I think, when the initial building that we thought we were going to be in, we found in February before we opened, it was February of 2021. Mm-hmm. So like 7 months or whatever it was before we opened, we found out that the zoning was wrong. And it was crazy. Like the owner of it was a school, and the owner of the building didn't know that the zoning had been changed. The realtor of the didn't know. No one knew until we had proactively contacted the village to say, can we put a sign out or whatever it was? And they're like, not only no to that, but you shouldn't be there. And we're like, what? So we had to pivot and find a new location for our school within that time period, like quick, like 3-4 months. And then we had to renovate a building before we opened. I mean, it was crazy how insane that was, but we did it. If there's a will, there's a way. And I guess that's the biggest message I say is, with anyone who wants to start a school, you've got to just, there's going to be challenges all along. It never stops, but you got to just find your way around it and keep on going. What is that advice that you might give to parents or others who are considering founding a school like Lake Country Classical Academy? How do they start? Where do they start? What are the challenges? And is the reward in the end worth all this effort? Yes. There's so much that goes into this. And I think number one, it's really creating a team of people, your board, that has a diversity in terms of skills that can really dive in and help you figure this out. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is a full-time job getting going. You have to have at least one dedicated person who can be overseeing this project from the beginning all the way through. And even once you open, there's still a lot. It doesn't end when your doors open. So having an attorney on your board is really, really a good idea because there's a lot of legal documents you're going to have to draft, and it's going to save you a lot of money if you can have someone like that with that type of expertise. We had no money starting out. So it was, figure this out day by day, a lot of research, a lot of time, a lot of meetings, a lot of, researching everything about the school, what we wanted to do. So that's important to have a team in place. The curriculum and the support, the teacher support, everything there is a huge piece. So that's why we went with Hillsdale. I'm not even aware of any other organization that provides this type of support for free. We are extremely grateful for that. And so that's another piece that you want to try and make sure that if you don't have people on your board that can run with a curriculum and that kind of thing, you definitely want to give Hillsdale a call on that to help out with that. But I would just say, it's a big undertaking, and you just want to take it day by day because it can be overwhelming at times. So you just got to take one step at a time. You need someone who's really organized and can kind of keep everything on track, and knowing that the difference you're going to be making in your community and the long-term effects that this will have on children for years to come and for our country, nothing could be more important. And for that reason, I would do it all again. Kristina Vourax is Public Relations Manager for Hillsdale College K-12 Education Office, in addition to being the founding board president for a Hillsdale College member school. A couple of questions as we close here that sort of bridge that gap between those two roles. One is about how schools can build that relationship with the local community, the surrounding community. You are new. You are doing something that perhaps people are unaware of. What is a charter? What is classical education? How do you start to build that relationship with the community? Yeah, I think once your school is up and going, your parents are going to be your best ambassadors. And so being able to equip them and really educate your parents on what is classical education and what makes this so special. I think one of the biggest challenges we've faced once the doors have opened, people know they're coming to us, or I shouldn't say all of them, but a lot of the people are coming to us because they're trying to get away from what's across the street, but they may not really truly understand what classical education is. So that falls on us, the school, to educate the parents on what it is, what is classical education, why is this so rigorous, why is it so challenging, and how this is good for your child, and how can you as parents support your children. And then the parents then can also communicate this to others in their community on what this is and how special it is and why it's different and why perhaps they should consider enrolling their children or supporting the school. The other thing that I would say is being able to bring members of the community, when it's reasonable, into the school. See it for yourself. Nothing can explain and get people to really understand it more than when you step foot in a classical Hillsdale school and see the difference between what's going on inside those walls versus what you're going to see at any other school. It's remarkably different. I mean, the first time I went to a Hillsdale Classical School as a part of the founding effort, I went to Seven Oaks Classical Academy. I was just amazed at the order and the peace and the joy of learning. And it was like, if we could only create something like this in our own community, it would just be this beacon of hope for people in southeastern Wisconsin. And so that's really our hope.
And some of these schools deal with both accidental and at times intentional misperceptions about what those schools are, what they do, about curriculum. As a public relations manager now for the K-12 Education Office, what's your advice for dealing with some of those issues? It might be somewhat similar to what you just laid out, I suppose. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think just clear communication and education, again, with your own families, but also in public relations with the community. It's good to also create almost an army of influencers for your school, where other people, you get them in there to see it, and then they can talk on your behalf and spread the good word. Word of mouth is the best PR you can ask for. So really educating your community on what this is all about and the impact it can have on children.
Kristina Vourax is Public Relations Manager for Hillsdale College's K-12 Education Office and Founding Board President for Hillsdale College Member School. That's Lake Country Classical Academy in southeast Wisconsin. Kristina, thanks so much for joining us here on the Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast.
Thank you very much.
I'm Scot Bertram. We invite you to like us on Facebook. Search for Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education. You also can follow us on Instagram at Hillsdale_K-12. Hillsdale_K-12 on Instagram. Thank you for listening to the Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast, part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you find your audio.